going to give a nice preamble to this because I know a lot of people don't have an athletic subscription. But if you do, Mike Sando, who was formerly of ESPN, I think he actually covered the Niners for ESPN for a long time. If I remember when I was little, when I was maybe 8, 9, 10, the ESPN writer for the 49ers was Mike Sando. And basically what Mike Sando does after every draft is he polls I don't know how many executives, but he gets a poll of anonymous comments from player personnel, guys, GMs, a bunch of higher level executives within the NFL, and they talk through each draft. And when it got to the 49ers draft, right, I thought there was one particular comment that was pretty interesting that I would love to talk about here. And that's from one random executive, one salty executive. And he said, San Francisco is one of those teams that does a great job of creating a narrative, and they get treated kindly. An exec said, other teams with better records over the past 4 years get crushed. Look at some of their early draft picks. What makes you think Trey Lance is the right pick if you follow their record of early picks? And now I think this guy's a little bit salty. I think he's an exec who's taken a lot of beatings from the media in the past, but I do think there's some truth to it, and I think there is some conversation. So, Sam, you're the rookie here. I'm going to kick it off to you first. What are your thoughts about these comments? Do you think there's validity to them? What do you think about them?
I think the only point of validity there is that, like historically, when trading up to get a quarterback from 12-3, it's not like the best likelihood of like him being successful. But that's not, it's not really a point to be taken in. Really, it depends on the situation. I think Trey Lance is going to the best situation there is out of all 5 quarterbacks. I don't think it's relatively close. You can argue the Jets are building something with Zach Wilson, but they're still building it. I think the Niners are ready to win right now. I think it's been that way, even with Garoppolo. And even if Lance can't start day one, I mean, he's going to a great situation. He's going to succeed. It's going to be a tough time or a tough. Oh my God, you know what I'm saying? Yeah.
No, you're good.
Jason?
So, I mean, I think that you're right? There is a narrative around Kyle Shanahan that he can do no wrong, right? In many circles, he's regarded as, a top 3 coach, mind-wise as far as like play design, right? And I think that there is some validity to the idea that sometimes they do get away with some of those picks because they've hit on, Fred Warner, George Kittle, all those other guys. And then Kyle makes up the rest with what he does with his mind. So while I don't agree fully with whatever this executive said, there is some sort of validity to the idea that Kyle Shanahan can almost do no wrong, right? And that's why it's funny. If another team, and we talked about this when we were talking on the phone, Vish, if another team did what the 49ers did and they drafted Trey Lance, they'd probably get killed for the moves. And I didn't want to take your point or anything like that. I'll pass it to you right there, but because Kyle Shanahan is quote unquote getting his guy, which, that's what we all believe, I think that it's viewed differently. Like, like you said, if Matt Nagy did that, right? Like, let's say Matt Nagy did it, they would just be like crushing the Bears right now. So I'm interested to get your thoughts on it because you kind of sparked my mind when we were talking about that. As much as, listen, you're not going to find a bigger Kyle Shanahan, lover than me, but there is some validity to what was said about, him being a little bit bulletproof, him being the golden child, almost not feeling the pressure of it all because everybody always has the idea of, look at the roster you took in. Okay, but then all these draft picks that you missed on, right. All that stuff all that context kind of gets lost in the shuffle just because everybody's in love with Kyle Shanahan, rightly so when it comes as a play designer. But I feel like he does get away from that criticism sometimes.
He's definitely not perfect. He's made mistakes before, especially in the Super Bowl. That's a good point where he definitely could. Like if the Jets drafted Trey Lance, a guy from the FCS, only played 18 games, 19 games, something like that. 17 actually. So I mean, he would have got killed by New York media. I mean, Zach Wilson alone gets killed by New York media for being from BYU, not having enough competition, and NDSU is much like their competition is much worse than Alabama faces in the FBS. It's not even close. I think if he went to a different situation, he would have got killed for competition. The same thing Zach Wilson does, but even more.
Yeah, and so I think all of those things are fair points. I do want to point out our guy, Splash Cousin here. We all know him. We love him. Jordan's the man. Tannehill stan number 1 right here. The only Tannehill that's a bigger Tannehill than me. but he said it was probably Ryan Pace. That was my first thought too. I thought Ryan Pace would be the guy because this seemed like someone who's salty. And frankly, if you look at the way the Niners are covered, and I say this as a Niners fan, probably a true Shanahan like Jason, I'm a huge Kyle Shanahan fan. They are covered very favorably than what their record reflects. The Chicago Bears have made the playoffs twice out of the last 4 years. The 49ers have 3 losing seasons out of the last 4 years. Which team is looked at, Jason, where the coach, GM, everything they're looked at as the next big thing, and which team is looked at as where fire the coach, fire the GM, everybody's gone?
Yeah, I mean, you can see that right off the bat, and even with that gaffe of the Solomon Thomas without getting Mahomes and Watson, it still hasn't given them. So everybody just remembers Trubisky, but nobody remembers that, or they do, but it's never right. Held against them to the degree.
Right, and the Niners needed a quarterback in that draft too. And whatever you want to say about Trubisky, and I've taken my fair share of shots at Trubisky over the years. I mean, it's too easy for me. He's the Chicago Bears quarterback. I know a lot of Bears fans, and calling Trubisky the next Blake Bortles was just my thing, even though Trubisky is better than Blake Bortles. But the point is that Solomon Thomas is not a better football player than Mitchell Trubisky. He is not. I think that needs to be stated. And for whatever reason, the Niners have avoided that criticism, and the Bears haven't. But I think it all comes down to one thing, and I think Mike Sando answers it. His next line in this quote after this is that Kyle Shanahan's presence is what, and I think that's important. And I'm just going to go on a little side tangent. So I was watching a little bit of Niners 2017. Don't ask me why. I think I watched 4 games. I was just watching the Niners 2017. And my big takeaway is that now when you look at 2017, 4 years later, now that, you're removed from the emotions of Jimmy Garoppolo coming in, going 5-0, all of that. You know what my biggest takeaway was? The way that team was coached in 2017, if Jimmy Garoppolo had started 16 games, the team would have gone 9-7. And I didn't look at that actually as, wow, Jimmy Garoppolo played incredible. Looking back, it was just, wow, CJ Beathard and Brian Hoyer, Kyle was already scheming it up so well in a lot of those games. That's why they were playing so tight with Indianapolis. That's why they played Seattle tough. That's why they played so many of those teams tough. It was just that the quarterbacks just couldn't make 50% of the plays because those 2 quarterbacks, unfortunately, are not NFL caliber starting quarterbacks. And I think all 3 of us agree Jimmy Garoppolo is a legitimate starting caliber NFL quarterback. And when you have that level of guy with this level of coaching, you can win a lot of games because the coaching is just so well done. And I think that really answers this question. That's the problem. When you look at Matt Nagy, you don't look at it as if he gets Justin Fields, now all of a sudden they're going to change it. I think people are looking at it as whoever Kyle wants, if he likes him enough, he gets him. He can do all these things because there's so much already schemed up for the quarterback. And I think that's really where, I get why this exec, I'm assuming it's Ryan Pace, but why this exec is salty. But if you don't have, unfortunately, there's only one of Kyle Shanahan, and there's only 4 or 5 guys who are on his level. And that's why people are so optimistic about the potential.
Yeah, I mean, and then, Kyle's never really been seen with his guy. That's the other thing that people are gravitating to, right? RG3 was forced on him. Kirk Cousins, he only coached for 3 games. And remember, Sean McVay is the one who really developed Kirk more than anything, even if that's an offshoot of that offense. Sean McVay deserves a lot of that credit. Kyle's never really had his guy. So now everybody's excited to see this play designer with someone that he desires, right? And that's what I think more than anything everybody's gravitating to. It's hey, man, we already know this guy's been scheming it open for every single quarterback. Now, whether they make the plays is one thing or the other. But now, if he sees and identifies someone and makes this drastic move from 12-3, then this has got to be great, right? So I think that's really what it is more than anything. Matt Nagy doesn't have that stigma around him. He doesn't have that narrative around him of being a play caller like that. So I think that's another thing, too, as well. Again, I'm not trying to talk bad about Coach. I'm just trying to be objective right here down the middle. And I think this is where he skirts some of that criticism because he's never had his guy, and now this is his opportunity to
On the other hand, now that he has his guy, there's definitely pressure there. Shanahan to, let's see what you got. Unlock the playbook. Let's see what you can do.
For sure.
There's definitely pressure
100%.
there. So,
and
so it's not like he's definitely has to prove himself. Yeah,
for sure. And this is that nuance that goes beyond just wins and losses in a guy's record and all of that. Look at Adam Gase. Adam Gase with a terrible Jets roster 2 years ago went 7-9. Kyle only went 6-10 last year with an injured 49ers roster, but it had a top 5 defense. But that's where it gets you. Do you watch them? What are you seeing when you watch them? How much is the coach impacting the game? And you can see that Adam Gase offensively is not elevating his offense or the players are maximizing his players as well as Kyle Shanahan clearly is. And I think that's really important. And that's why people have this stigma. And then the other thing I wanted to touch on, and I think this is the guy that doesn't get enough credit, it's John Lynch's role. John Lynch is from the media, so Fox loves John Lynch, right? He worked at Fox, so Fox won't say anything bad about John Lynch. John Lynch is also probably the single most personable person, probably says the right thing more than anybody I've ever seen. He always is interesting. He's always kind. He's respectful. He always has the right things to say. And when you look at all of those things, I think it's really tough to say anything bad about John Lynch because he's been successful in every walk of life he's participated in, and he's just the ultimate guy.
Yeah, one more thing I wanted to touch on with Nagy is I think I lost it, actually. Damn it. All right, I'm sorry. My bad. Come back to me real quick, guys, because I had it for a second there. Yeah.
You got anything to add? I know we dug deep with a little bit of Adam Gase right there.
Well, no. I mean, Adam Gase was just special coach to watch. Everything he ran was just didn't go the way. Jason.
No. I remember real quick. So when I was talking about when you were talking about Nagy elevating, right? If anything, he's been having to dumb his playbook down to people, like get it all the way down and strip it down. And maybe that has to do more with personnel, but he's not elevating Mitchell Trubisky. He had to push the offense towards him, give him all those easy throws, and basically force feed David Montgomery to take all that pressure off of him. So in a way, yeah, it's almost the same thing. But I feel like with him, that play calling doesn't get looked at as elevating. It gets looked at as more like I'm just trying to survive, right here with them. Whereas if it was Kyle might be able to elevate that with a little bit more of getting guys open. There it is. I'm sorry. That's what
I actually 100% agree with that point. What Matt Nagy did the last 5 games of last year is what he should have done with Mitchell Trubisky his entire career. If Mitchell Trubisky had started off with Kyle Shanahan or Sean McVay, he would be looked at the same way Jared Goff is looked at. If you put him in an offense that puts him under center, you go 21-22 personnel, you protect him with play action, you process the game for him, you give him half-field reads, ton of boots, all of those things, and utilize his athleticism, he would be looked at as that kind of player. Instead, he's looked at as a massive, massive bust because Matt Nagy tried putting him in the gun. They tried running RPOs. They tried running all these random trick plays. They basically tried being a version of Kansas City's offense when that's not the style of quarterback they had. And I respect Matt Nagy for making the adjustment and handing over the play calling duties and then them running that little bootleg version of Sean McVay's offense for the last 5 games of last year. But I do think that's the most important point, that when you look at the coach, you can't just look at the results. You also have to look at, are they maximizing their players? And it's the Adam Gase example. He went 7-9 with the Jets 2 years ago, but he wasn't maximizing his players, even though there weren't a lot of good ones on that roster. And Shanahan always maximizes his players. And that's why the Niners have a very positive stigma.
To put Adam Gase and Matt Nagy in a similar place is that they both played too much trial and error with young quarterbacks. You really can't do that from a schematic point of view. I thought they tried too many things, and the courts were put in too many bad situations, and it just ruins them. It gives them no rhythm, gives them no confidence, and confidence is such a big thing for quarterbacks, always. And it really killed their confidence. They really couldn't bounce back from that, especially Sam Darnold. If you watched him, his last couple of games of the Jets.
Yeah, 100% agree. And Jason, do you have anything before we move on?
No, this is honestly a really, really good topic because, like I said, when we talked, this was going to be a good conversation because there is points that I agree with on this, even if I don't agree with the overall point. Like whoever this is and he's saying whatever he is about Kyle Shanahan, I can agree to a certain degree that he has skirted criticism. But at the same time, there is that portion of, hey, he's never had his guy, so he's not only built up the stigma with being a play caller, now he's going to get his guy, so people are going to let him get a little bit more free reign. So that's where I disagree. Does definitely sound like whoever this executive is, he's very salty. He just doesn't like the fact that I'm being picked apart and Kyle Shanahan can't do any wrong. Well, design plays better, man, and you'll get that. Right. That's the thing.
And you get it too, right? You go down the list, like Dante Pettis was a high pick, and Jalen Hurd hasn't really worked out, and Kyle Shanahan's supposed to be the receiver guy, and he's 2 for 4 on first 3 rounds receivers. So I do get it, but kind of to put a bow on this entire discussion, I think the the big thing is, yeah, you're right. Like, I think there is some validity to this comment that the Niners do maybe get a fair shake from the media, but it's just not to be cliche, but life just isn't fair. Sorry. More talented people are going to get more opportunities, and they're just going to be given more rope to succeed because of their talent. And Kyle Shanahan is the most talented at coaching and offensive play calling, possibly in the entire NFL. And so I think that's why he's always going to get that longer rope than somebody like Nagy, where you don't see the special traits.
One more thing, too. Also, on top of all that, Kyle Shanahan has context to each season to why things went wrong. Took over a terrible roster in 2017. Jimmy, electrifies a little bit. 2018, he gets hurt. Okay, that season's wiped out. 2019, they made the Super Bowl. Okay, you'll be back. 2020, okay, the entire team's decimated. So each year, you can get context to why the 49ers were bad. It's not necessarily that they were just bad. Like, every single year, there's a new reason, or there's more context to the discussion about why they were what either bad or why they were good. So,
Sam, I know we've kind of kept you out, so I'm going to change the topic real quick. But before we go, Jason, I will say this, and I'll say this only to maintain objectivity. We follow the Niners closely, so we know all the reasons to that. I feel like every bad team in NFL history we can point out. Like, if I really wanted to, I feel like I could make 15 excuses for Adam Gase, because I thought Mike McCagnon was one of the worst GMs in the history of football with the guys he
pretty
picked.
bad.
So I think that as bad as Gase was, I could still make that argument. But yes, I do think that is a fair point.
Well, I think you can make excuses for everyone. I mean, I think you can make excuses for everyone, but at the same time, you got to hold everyone accountable, because at the end of the day, I mean, Gase was still a very important part of that team. I mean, there's no more important position or part of a football team than the head coach.
Right.
I mean, he has his own staff. I mean, for Gase, you can argue that he didn't build a good enough staff around his players, but that's a problem with a lot of coaches out there who didn't succeed.
100%.